In the default settings, when I said DNS, DHCP, default NACL, default security groups are created, one more thing is created, which is called default routing table. This dictates who can talk to whom. It's like your address book by which you can select a person's number and dial that number. That is your default routing table. So anything which has to communicate with each other, they will first consult a routing table, and by that they would be able to talk to external world. So what we have here is all my subnet, and let me name this EC2 machine. Let's say I call it A, I call it B, I call this one C, and let's say I call this one D. Okay, so what I did, I have created 4 subnet, let's assume, and I have deployed 4 EC2 machines there. Now, I have a question for you, and pay attention and answer this question. My questions are, can A talk to, let me add one more thing here, talk to E. Give me a minute, I'll add one more component here. Let's say this is my machine here. I have one more machine here, which is called E. So my question to you is, can A talk to E? Is it possible? Can A and E talk? Let's say there is no security setting. Let's say everything is in default condition. Can A and E talk? Note without routing? No, I'll come back to that. Let me ask another question. So that was the first question I wanted to ask. Can A talk to one? So that was first. Second, can A talk to C? Third is, can A talk to D? Hope everyone is getting the idea. I'm talking about communication across subnet, within subnet, across availability zone. What are the answer? I'm getting yes and no, yes and no, yes and no. Okay. Interesting. A and C, no. Okay, let me explain that. I would say in default condition, and if I'm using default security group and everything is default, I would say all these communications are yes. All these communication can talk. There is no restriction. I'll show you how. Don't get confused. It is very easy to get confused, but this is what default happens. By default, everyone can talk to everyone. Everything is yes. Intentionally, I asked a question where you would be thinking and coming up with different answer. Every communication is yes, and why that is yes, I'll give you an answer in a minute. The answer is relying on something called routing table. So if you remember, there is a default or what we call main route table created, and that main route table has routing setting for what can talk to whom or what kind of communication can happen. So let me quickly show you that default routing table. So remember our VPC, which was BESA01. I have just created that VPC. I have not manually created any routing table, but I got a main routing table created for me. And let's see what is inside that. So these are my route tables. This is my BESA VPC. Remember the number starts with VPC03, and I would be selecting the route table for this VPC03. See this? You can see this one information, and this one belongs to BESA VPC01. To make it easier, I would give it a name so that we can relate to it again and again. I would change its name to say main route table BESA VPC01. Route table is a mechanism which is consulted whenever a communication needs to happen. And this route table has routes inside. Right. Let me show what is inside. Inside this route table, we have routes, and these routes tell who can talk to whom. So if you see this route table has an entry which says 10.00/16 local active propagated no, and this one is not modifiable. So by default, as soon as you get a VPC created, that gets a route table, and that has an entry like this, which is called a local entry, and nobody can modify that. That route table always gets created, no exception, has to be there, which means everyone by default is connected here. So if I try to draw again more connections, what is currently happening? This is referring to here. This one here is also referring to here, and this one here is also referring to here, which means everyone is associated with main route table, which means everyone can talk to everyone, no restriction. Is it good or bad? I would say it is good because if I want everyone to communicate with each other, I don't have to make any extra effort. Everyone can talk to each other. Consider you are living into an apartment complex. So you can go and talk to everyone. Nobody is restricting you. Same thing here. Within a same community, you can talk. That's what is happening. But now I have created a subnet called public and another subnet called private. So how does it make a difference? Because if it is everyone talking to each other, then it doesn't make sense. So what we can do then in that case, we can add a route table which is purely for few applications to communicate. So we'll see that in a minute, right? So by default, everyone can talk to each other. Now, you may want that I want to expand this particular uh, VPC and it should be able to talk to internet, and for that I need to add a component which is called IGW. So what I would be doing, I would be adding a component which is called IGW, and IGW is a way for me to communicate to internet. So this is my internet and I want to communicate to it. So for that, what I have to do, first I have to create a IGW, and once the IGW is created, I have to attach it to the VPC. Where I have to attach? I have to attach it to the VPC. So I'll create a IGW and then attach to the VPC. IGW is needed when I want my machines to communicate to external world. So I will go RT is for subnet. No, RT is created within a VPC, but it can be associated with multiple subnets. So I won't say, Kamesh, that it is only for one subnet. It can be associated to multiple subnets. So I have a internet gateway getting created here, which I will call IGW BESA. That's all. Done. And I say create internet gateway. Internet gateway is chargeable. When the traffic traverses through that, it is chargeable. When your traffic is going, just creating it won't be getting charged, but once your traffic start flowing from that, that is where you start paying money. So you would be paying that time money, Zeb. That time you have to pay money for. So I have created an internet gateway, but if you see, its state is detached. So it's a detached. What I need to do now, I have to attach this to the VPC. So next thing I am doing on my internet gateway, which is this, and I'm saying, hey, I want to attach to a VPC, and that VPC is my BESA VPC. Only one internet gateway can be attached to one VPC. It cannot be shared. It has to be independent for every VPC. So I am attaching an internet gateway. So what I am able to achieve so far, I am able to achieve this communication where I have a IGW which is connected to my VPC. But my machines do not know about it. My machines only know about local communication because they only refer to route table. Consider that in your city, a new airport is open, but nobody was made aware about that new airport. Google Map has no information about that airport. So even if physically it exists, you will never be able to reach there because nobody knows where it is and nobody has a map entry for it. So what we have to do now, in Google Map, I have to say, hey Google Map, this location points to the new airport and please add it. Whenever somebody would search, you should be able to point them to that location. So what we are doing now, we have to make awareness of this IGW to the subnets we have created. One option for that is I can go to my route tables here, and in my main route table, I can add an entry. This is my main route table. So these are my routes here, which is talking to only local as of now. You can see it. Now, if I'm looking for, I can say, okay, let's do one thing. Let's do edit route. I want to edit a route. This is a not modifiable route. You cannot change anything here. But I can add a route here, and internet is represented by all zeros. This we call quad zero route, which is representing every available IP address other than 10.0.0.16. So I'm representing it with that and say whenever a traffic is coming for this, what you have to do, you have to send traffic to someone else. Who that someone else could be? It could be an internet gateway, and that internet gateway is what we have created here. So what I did now, I have created an entry into my main route table which says I would allow everyone to go to internet. If they come to me and ask a path, I would forward them to internet gateway. So what we have here in my main route table now, I have an entry which is representing my IGW. And by default, every subnet is associated with this route table, which means everyone is able to go out to internet. Is it good or bad? I would say it is bad. I don't want everyone to go to internet. It defies the purpose of having public or private subnet. So probably this is not the best place to create that routing table. So what else can be? What we can do, we can create another routing table if I want. Let me show that. So what I'm going to do here, I am going to create another routing table like this. This is the second routing table I am creating. And in this second routing table, let's call it internet routing table. And only in that, I would be adding entry for my IGW. So not everyone can talk to external world, only the machines which are connected to my public subnet can communicate to it. So that's what I'm trying to do here. Let's create a new route table called internet route table. So this is my route tables, and I want to create a new actions. Sorry, here is a create route table entry. I would be calling it my internet route table BESA. Which VPC it will be part of. So I have to select a VPC. I have selected it, and see, now I'm not adding any entry by default. The 10.0.0 local entry will always be there, no exception. Local entry would always be present. As you can see, as soon as I have created it, see this entry automatically get caught here. This is by default there, which means this entry here is by default. I don't have to make that entry. So this entry is there. What I can do now, I can add an entry here, which is for my internet gateway. So let me go ahead here and say I want to add a route, and that route is for everything on the internet, and that will be represented by internet gateway, and that would be through IGW this, and I can say save changes. So what I did now, I have created another route table, but my main route table still has an entry for IGW. So let me remove that, and I will show you one more option about association of this route table. So I have two route table in this VPC now. One is default, another one which I created for only internet. Let me first show the main one. And in the main, I have already entry for internet gateway. I don't want to keep it anymore, so I can go ahead and remove it. See this, these are two routes. I will edit it and say bye bye internet gateway. I don't want you to be there. So physically it is still there, but this route table has no information about it. And the second route table which I have created, internet gateway, lets me add this entry into that route table. Hopefully everyone is following along and understanding. Right. So this is my internet route table. And in that, I would be associating the route. Let me edit the route. This is the one, that's fine. This is connected to external world, no issues. So now I can connect to external world. But this route table is currently not activated. Activated in the sense it exists, but nobody is referring to. Why? Let me explain that. Let me go to the default route table which we had, this main route table. If you go to this route table, there is a tab which says subnet association. The browser is very slow. See this subnet association main route table. This tells who is referring to this, means who is using this route table. See this explicit subnet association is 0. If you read this, let me make it a little smaller. So this says who are associated. So explicit subnet association is 0. Nobody is explicitly associated with this route table. But as this is main route table, see this word here, main is yes. And that's why every subnet is associated with it. I have one, but that is subnet is associated here, which means this subnet is still referencing to the route table which we by default had. It is not talking to the internet route table. So what I can do next, I can go ahead on that subnet and say subnet, please start referring to a second routing table which we have created, and that you should be using as a source of truth for making any communication possible. So this is my subnet here, and in this subnet I would say route table, let me associate you. Go ahead and do that, edit route table association. It is by default pointing to the default one. See this one? I say no, you should talk to internet route table. So what I have done now, I have associated my public subnet to a different route table, and my main route table is associated with my private subnet. Any new subnet when it comes in, by default it will get to private, which means they would never have internet. Only my machines who are in public subnet or any subnet which is associated with the internet route table would be able to go forward, otherwise it won't be. Hopefully everyone is following along and understanding. What is there a setting to making it the main? No. Parna, there is no setting for making it a default. It by default happens. As soon as you create a VPC, a default route table gets associated. That is called main. You can't change it. You can change association of it, but that by default happens. Okay, so this is good. But now if you see this machine A, E, and B, they can talk to internet. Why? Because they have communication channel through IGW. But if I talk about my machine C and D, they can't talk to external world. Why? Because they have no entry for route table. And that's what we wanted. We want to make them private. But what if on this machine C, I have to go to internet and download a patch for installation? So can this machine C and D right now access internet? Answer is no, and we want that to happen. And for that, we have one more type of component which we can create, which is called net gateway. What I'm doing here, I'm just replacing this E with a different component, which I would be calling a net gateway. Net stand for network address translation. It is an entity which can take traffic from internal subnet, private subnet, forward it to public and get response back. It's like a proxy. Right. So what we are doing here, we are creating a net gateway first, and we would add its entry into the main route table. So it would become the interface for all external communication for my private machine. So first thing I am going to do here is creating a net gateway. Be aware, net gateways are chargeable. So when you create it, you have to pay money for it, whether you use it or not. So what I'm going to do here, I'm calling it my BESA net gateway. I would be putting it into the subnet. See this, my public subnet, right? And then I would say whether it would be public or private, it would be public. I would be needing a elastic IP address. I would say, let me allocate a elastic IP address with that. So I can allocate a elastic IP address. I'll talk about elastic IP, and I say create a net gateway. So net gateway is now being ready for me, and it would get an ID like this. See, this is my net gateway ID, net dash something something. But it exists, no one is aware about it. So what we have to do now, we have to then associate it with a route table. So that's what we will be going to do. Now, question to you, where I should add entry for net gateway? Should it be in internet routing table, or should it be into main routing table? Where I should add entry for net gateway? What do you think? What would be the best place? Main is where we would be adding. So what we would do here, I would say to main route table, hey main route table, I know you can't go to internet. I'll make you go to internet by adding a entry into you. Let's go ahead and add that entry. So we are going to add that into main route table. So my net gateway is ready. That is fine. It is now, state is pending. It will be becoming available in a minute. But for that, I can go ahead and add its routing table entry. So let's go ahead into route table, and we would be going ahead and making changes. So this is my main route table, which has no way to talk to internet. We will make it aware of internet. How? We by adding a edit entry. Destination would be same. Destination would be still 000, which is internet, but instead of directly going to internet, I would say, hey, you go through net gateway, and this is the net gateway you should be referencing to. So what we did now, we have added entry for this through my net gateway. And how my network would look like now, my network would look like this. So the good thing, machines in private subnet still can access internet, but not directly. Their request will be first forwarded to net, and net would be going forward and making requests outside and bring traffic back. But my public machines can directly go and access internet, should not be a problem. So probably services like your web server, you should keep them into public. Services like your databases, you should keep them into private, so that they won't have a problem in communicating with each other, and they would still be protected from outside world. So that's how we can create these networks. Okay, Hope everyone is following along. Now, networking is a complicated topic. I'm trying to cover the basic concepts, but obviously I can't cover everything, but at least you are getting idea on how your networking routing table and other options are there.